Morning Liberty.
Well, what is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of the Good Morning Liberty podcast. With me, as always, is Charles Chuck Thompson, and also with us via Zoom is the Libertarian Party Vice Presidential Candidate, Mr. Spike Cohen. How's it going today, man?
I'm doing great, Nate and Charles Chuck. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good.
We're doing pretty good. It's just been a real busy day of working from home, not ever having to leave or put pants on or any of those annoying things that you have to do when you have to go out to work,
Wait, so, I didn't have to put pants on?
No, this is these days we only live from the top half up, so it's a waste of money these days, pants are.
We're working on such specific target demos, and they said the pantsless people we already had locked down. And so now we're trying to get the people who wear pants vote.
Yeah.
But you're right, no one can even tell.
I'm thinking we can maybe put a pants fine through Congress, possibly, just so we can all be more comfortable all the time. So would you vote for something like that? Would you be behind a pantsing fine? Potentially
a fine for wearing pants.
Yeah. We need to go and get you on the record right now.
I would be more amenable to that than I would for a fine for not wearing pants.
Okay, all right.
I will say, as somewhat of a doctrinaire libertarian, it rubs me somewhat the wrong way to fine people for wearing pants.
I would say,
but if we're gonna get into mandating clothing, I would rather mandate no pants wear.
Okay, I wanted to start off right now so we can see. The people want to switch off the podcast right now or keep it going, they can make that decision, So tell us a little bit about yourself. Fill everyone in and let everyone know who you are, what you've been doing, and what you're up to now.
Absolutely. So my name is Spike Cohen, and I am the Libertarian Party nominee and candidate for vice president, along with my running mate, Joe Jorgensen. We are running on a campaign to basically undo all of the terrible things that the Republicans and Democrats have done in their exclusive control of government for the last 150 years. And I started a website design company back in 1999 when I was just before my 17th birthday. And 3 years ago, I sold that company so I could focus my life on my real passion, which is spreading the message of liberty to the world and training on how to use military equipment in military settings, and then unleashing the people they just trained militarily into our communities and our neighborhoods. We would end that. We would end qualified immunity, which is the absurd legal doctrine that says that if the police determine that what they did was reasonable to themselves, then they aren't able to be sued for when they kill us or hurt us or in any other way infringe upon our rights and liberties. Imagine being able to go into court and say, Your Honor, I know I was just accused of murder, but what I did was perfectly reasonable. And the judge goes, okay, well, I'll throw out the charges. That's qualified immunity. That would end immediately. We would end the minimum sentencing guidelines which would allow judges to come up with more compassionate restorative sentencing for especially first-time offenders, but really any offenders. We would move towards a model of restorative justice over retributive justice, and we would use the Department of Justice as a department of actual justice, going after abusive police, abusive government officials, abusive departments with a long history of abuse and discrimination. And we would basically upend the entire relationship between the federal government and the states, where instead of us sponsoring them to become ever more brutal and ever more militarized, we would do the opposite. We would cut off their funding. We would defund them at the federal level, and then we'd force them to actually enforce and protect and not infringe upon the constitutionally protected and affirmed rights and your life and property as well.
Yeah, and that's what we've been talking about on this show is you want to make it as local as possible. It's just like education and other things. It's like there's no reason that the federal government should have any purview, whether it be by, dollars, which is basically quid pro quo anyway, over the states. They shouldn't be like, oh, we're going to withhold this funding from you if you don't do what we want and other things like that. But it's very interesting. Obviously, our position, well, I think Nate's still a member of the Libertarian Party. I'm not yet, but I might be. I mean, after talking to Dr. Joe Jorgensen and obviously this interview, and the more I go down it, it's like, okay, maybe I need to be a part of the party of what I align with mostly.
Yeah, we'd love to have you
and try to get that. So I would say that I'm a small L libertarian, although I don't like being boxed in. That's how libertarian I am.
So libertarian, you can't join the party.
But
so which L are you? Am I being detained?
Right. Charlie has said that before. I'm pretty sure.
I actually have.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's on a serious note, it's like all those our solutions are great, and I know that and I'm not sure if this is part of the actual libertarian platform, but we probably would consider a more privatized police. But even if we don't go that far, let's say we don't do that, would it be a position of redirecting funding that you would see in more police training and different forms of policing? Because it's not like I don't think we can get rid of police overnight. I mean, to me, what I'm seeing, the defund the police chants are all about redirecting that money somewhere else.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, there's a couple edgy kids talking about abolish the police outright right now. But for the most part, defund the police means less funding for the police and more funding for example, in the city of, I believe, Minneapolis, something like 60 or 70% of their calls, 911 calls, are mental health crises. Things that the last thing you want is two armed people to show up with handcuffs. Even if they're not there to shoot or arrest anyone, if you're in the middle of a mental health crisis, or if you're dealing, if you're dealing with people that have, schizophrenia, people that are dealing with massive panic attacks, people that are dealing with PTSD, a lot of veterans coming home from our endless, pointless wars who come home and have PTSD and traumatic brain injuries and everything else. You have people that are dealing with addiction. You have people that are dealing with an actual crisis where what they need is someone who comes and is trained in de-escalating that. And instead, you bring people who, if you're a hammer, every problem is a nail. And also, they don't have the training, and just their presence and their how they present is as demeanor. Two armed people or an armed person coming to deal with this problem, which is the last thing we need, and it escalates often. So, the short answer is I support putting things back in the hands of the individual communities and allowing them to decide what they want their police force to look like, if anything. And that's, we talk about privatizing the police force. And I tend to stay away from that term because to a lot of people, not necessarily to us, but to a lot of other people, when they hear private, they think country clubs, they think, only the rich being able to access something and the rest of us are shut out. And that's, of course, not what we mean. And instead I say community-based. So allowing that individual community to determine what it is they want. Allow individual neighborhoods to determine what they want in terms of their first response. Do they feel like they need some kind of, armed patrol? And if so, how much of them do they need? A lot of people have talked about moving towards a style of policing that's only on call. So the same as how fire departments and first responders operate. You don't have fire departments patrolling around looking for fires. They wait for a call and then they go out to it. And so there's an idea of doing the same thing with the police, that they come out only when needed for a specific thing that the police should be available for. And again, I think that should be left up to the communities. And I think the federal government's role is to stop funding the militarization and brutalization of our police forces, and also to actively prosecute and go after people who are infringing upon the rights of the people, whether they're police or government officials or mental health professionals or mental health officials or whatever else. Anyone who's working for government not only should qualified immunity end, but the federal government should have an active role in stopping people who are infringing upon the rights of the people that they purport to protect and serve.
I love what you just said there, because what you did is you changed a term. What we talk about on this show a lot is, there very few people actually think like libertarians. It's like 3% of the population, which imagine that we get about 3% of the vote. Because Nate and I love psychology, and so we took a deep dive into what the actual personality tests of people indicate. And it turns out around 95% of the United States are emotional thinkers. And so I love what you did there, where you're like, okay, people, because we have to change our messaging, which has been a big thing, I believe. Instead of saying privatize the police, we say let the communities decide, which I think is a great marketing shift to say, hey, we're going to tailor our message to the way people think, because when we say private,
Eureka.
they think rich people only. So if we say community, then they understand. That's brilliant. I love that. Yep. I love that response. Yep. I wanted to,
and it's great to eventually say, and we call this privatization or whatever, once you've got them down that pipeline, down that road into libertarianism. But for me to go, and I've been talking with countless Black Lives Matters protesters, Black Lives Matters officials, both state and regional and national. I've been talking with criminal defense attorneys, criminal justice attorneys, and civil rights attorneys. And when I talk to them about basically what we would call privatizing things or decentralizing things, and I call it community-based policing, community-based decisions, decentralization and things like that, they're loving it. They're saying, why did no one else come up with this? And I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, we did, but we called it privatization and it alienated everyone.
Well, just think, when you privatize something, I mean, the thing that the free market has that a government market does not is accountability to its customers.
Correct.
And that's something that really nothing that the government does, it has accountability. They can do what they want. And if you don't like it, well, tough, you get over it. But
and they put fancy terms like qualified immunity on it, so no one knows what it really means.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, ending qualified immunity is like saying, hey, if Amazon does something terrible to you, then they should have some redress of your grievances against them, and you should not have to pay them, or they should get in trouble for doing it. And they call it, if we had qualified immunity for corporations, I'm sure there's some kind of a qualified immunity for some type of corporations.
There's all sorts of carve-outs for immunity for large companies. The EPA exists for two purposes. Well, I guess three purposes. One, to make us think that they're protecting us and our environment. Two, to issue tiny fines to large companies that cause trillions and tens of trillions of dollars in economic damage, not to mention all the environmental damage and social and health damage that they're doing to us. And then three, to oversee through the federal government protections against them from getting sued for that. Yeah. If we took government out, I had someone say, without government, who would protect us from polluters? And I'd say, we would, by suing them. And we would not have the government actually passing laws making it illegal, making them exempt, giving them qualified immunity for what they do. Now, of course, if you or I litter, we get a $5,000 or $10,000 fine. But when they dump billions or millions of gallons of sludge into a river accidentally, and it just so happened to save them a bunch of money, and then they get fined less than what they saved, and they don't get sued, which would have put them out of business, so there's no deterrence against them doing it in the future. That's a perfect example of what happens. Going back to what you were talking about with emotional thinkers, all of us process things with some combination of intuition, emotion, and intellect. And that varies from person to person, but it also varies from subject to subject. The three of us will be more emotional on certain things than we would be on others. And also, the time of day and all sorts of other factors determine how we process things, which is why it is so important. And I learned this from, years of doing communications and sales with my company. You have to meet people where they are, not just in their spaces, but from their precepts. My friend Scott Horton likes to say, we're better than everyone on the issues, so why bother arguing with them? Just agree with them. We agree that police brutality is bad. We agree the cost of healthcare is too much. We agree that damage to the environment is terrible. We agree with all these things, so why argue with them? We agree with you. We agree that these things are a problem, and we have found solutions to those problems. But we can never show them those solutions if we first don't empathize with them, demonstrate we care, get the facts of what it is they care about, find out their, in sales we call them pain points, but find out what it is they care about, present ourselves as trustworthy and caring individuals who then present them our common sense libertarian solutions. That's how you get them. I do it all day long and it works.
We always say all the time, if you look at the left or something, they make an emotional argument and you can feel bad for people who are in a tough position, and you can say, well, we need to do this to fix this. Well, our argument is also very emotional. When you look at bad economics and bad government policy throughout history, it's one of the biggest killers of human beings that's ever existed, is bad government policy. We have an emotional argument here. You can look at pictures of how emotional this argument actually is. I had this same conversation. I had a great success with these Bernie Sanders supporters that came over to the table during Politicon, and they were like yelling at me and upset and all red in the face and everything, because our banner says BernieLies.com on it. That's one of the websites we have. But they were like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I was like, well, first off, let's talk about this. What do you agree with Bernie on? They're like, well, healthcare. We need healthcare. I'm like, Listen, healthcare, the pricing is egregious. We own and operate a healthcare company, a healthcare software company. That's what Charlie and I do. We deal in healthcare all the time. It's like this, it's completely egregious.
On the finance side,
on the finance side,
so
that's what we do.
Understand.
And my wife is a financial analyst for the biggest healthcare corporation in the world. Like I know about the pricing in healthcare. It's insane. I agree with you. People cannot afford to go to these appointments and to have these treatments. We absolutely agree that this is terrible. But let me tell you why the government might not be the solution for this problem. We both have the same end goal, which is for everyone to have an amazing life and live it to their fullest extent and be able to have the things that they want. We have the exact same goal, but we do not have the same way of getting there. And let's just discuss what we can agree on. Let's talk about certificate of need laws around the country.
Yes.
We can all agree that those are insane.
And the patent laws that allow companies to step in and buy pharmaceutical companies, gut their research departments, gut their marketing departments, and just keep their patents and their production and jack up the price 20-fold.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason they're able to do that is because the government has these patent laws that they will enforce against anyone who tries to make these decades-old drugs that should have been generic back when we were kids or even before that. It's one example after the next. If we give up on our inherent libertarian desire to win arguments and instead say, hey, why even have an argument? Healthcare is unaffordable. Here's a perfect example. People will say to me, healthcare is unaffordable. I think healthcare is a human right. And I think we should do like the other countries in the developed world and have free healthcare. We as libertarians are now fully emotionally triggered, right? Because we're hearing, healthcare is a right. No, it's not a right. Positive rights and negative rights. You should read Rothbard, right? And then we're also hearing, it should be free and other countries are doing it. And then we naturally now go, yeah, but in those other countries, they have rationing about. Now, here's what they said. They didn't say, I'm a doctrinaire socialist and I want to take from you, comrade, and each according to their ability, each according to their ability, to each according to their need. What they said was, I'm scared about the cost of healthcare, and I think this is the only real solution. So we agreed with them. We explain how we got here. We demonstrate that we actually give a crap about them, and then we can take them on that journey with healthcare. And we can do it with anything, healthcare, education, anything. But we have to agree with the vast majority of people out there who are not sociopaths that we all want the same things. We want affordable healthcare. We want good, affordable education for us and our children. We want wars. Almost all of us want the wars to end. We want people out of cages. We want police brutality to end. We want these things to end. So let's agree with them, and then let's show them the way.
Where do I sign up for the Libertarian Party?
LP.org/join.
It's because I'm really encouraged by the changing of the message, honestly, and throughout. Right now in this conversation, I'm getting emotional. I'm getting hopeful, and I'm thinking like, okay, I really believe that, there is a hopeful change occurring. I sticking on the emotional side of the argument kind of thing, because I think that's very important. And obviously Dr. Jo Jorgensen's, a professor of psychology. So
yes,
I know she definitely understands this. I wanted to watch this movie when it came out in theaters, but unfortunately my girlfriend was sick, and then I've been sick, and this pandemic hit and all this, whatever. But the movie Just Mercy, I watched it this weekend. I'm man enough to admit that I bawled my eyes out, and then I text Nate and said, I'm going to law school.
You want to fix it?
We literally have the emotional argument, because just watching that movie based on a true story, and then you go look up other things, government has been perpetrating these disgusting behind the scenes things against people that it's just so infuriating that I'm like, I need to figure out a way to make as much money as I can, go to law school and be a pro bono lawyer and help these people. The guy that they executed, we talked about Nathaniel Woods, same kind of deal. The guy they executed who had PTSD, he admitted, he's like, yeah, I made the bomb and I set it on the girl's porch. But the dude went to Vietnam when he was 18 and his entire freaking platoon got blown up in front of his eyes. And the guy just needed help. And yet they execute him. And all of, these, you think about, the more my eyes are open to, let's say, I come from conservatism. I come from the right. I was a big George Bush fan when I was back in the day, and I was like, yeah, turn the sand into glass and all of this stuff. And obviously, as I get deeper into this, I realize that the people who say that they're for you, they're not for you at all. They have their own agendas. And watching that movie this weekend, I was just like, I couldn't believe the levels of systemic, not only racism, but systemic injustice,
corruption.
And corruption. And I've known about, obviously, the corruption and a lot of things going on, but just the sheer level, like, how do those people sleep at night?
I think at some point they've convinced themselves that this was right. And so now they've just sort of divorced themselves from the reality of what they're doing. And I think some of them are also sociopaths. Unfortunately, I do think politics attracts sociopaths psychopaths. Because
power attracts sociopaths.
Power attracts sociopaths because they're like, oh, I can just pander to people and get in power and do whatever I want. And if I pander enough, they'll still love me because everyone's so beaten down by the world. They just want something to believe in. And so it's basically, it's what we call the cult of the omnipotent state. It's right in our our platform, in the Libertarian Party platform. We talk about this cult that's built around the idea that these people are our betters, sitting down from the city on the hill, and the font of knowledge that they are, bestowing upon us their countenance whenever they see fit. And it's just the opposite. It is the most corrupt and broken people that are there, and for no other reason than to do the bidding of powerful cronies who put them there and get them to sign off on endless legislation. Talking about this thing with criminal justice, most states have a quota of a minimum number of the people in these states that have to be in those prisons each year. And some of them have minimum increases to those quotas. Now, you're probably thinking, why the hell does my government have a quota of a certain number of me that have to be in jail?
That's insane.
Because they have contracts with prison labor contractors that make billions of dollars a year contracting effectively free prison labor. 23 cents an hour, 40 cents an hour is free. I mean, it's all but free. You're basically just paying for their costs, because then most of that gets eaten up either in the fines that they have to pay while they're in prison, or the cost of their care. They're being caged against their will. So they get basically nothing. And so, the 13th Amendment ended chattel slavery for the private sector, and it moved it to the system we have now, and which has been getting worse and worse every year. And there's only one reason why. All of these things, whether it's war, terrorism, immigration, education, healthcare, this with criminal justice, they all go down to one thing: follow the money. Who is profiting from this particular injustice? And once you see who's profiting from it, all of a sudden you find out who's been writing and sponsoring and co-sponsoring the laws. The people that they put in place, the people that they're giving the donations to. It's not really that hard to do. It's a very clear line between the cronies who want something done and who realize that because all the power is concentrated into a centralized government, that they don't have to make money by providing value to us, to the market, to the people. Instead, they can just patronize a relative handful of people at the top and give them legislation to sign in exchange for filling up their war chest. So they put millions in their war chest and get trillions back. It's quite a return on investment. They don't have to provide any actual value. They just have to create a system that robs all of us to their benefit. That's why the Republicans and Democrats have been in control for the better part of 150, or actually over 150 years, because that's the system the cronies set up.
We should set up an oversight committee to take care of this problem, actually.
That'll fix it. Blue ribbon panel. Yeah. A blue ribbon panel on ending cronyism sponsored by Monsanto.
We should make this kind of thing illegal. That's what we should do. That's the question I want to ask. Okay, so how do we shift the focus of... Because, then this aligns with another documentary that I watched. I believe it's called 13 on Netflix, which I thought was 13th, really, really, really good. Mm-hmm. Until they rightfully so, they started hating on ALEC, the American Legislative Executive Council. They're the ones that have written a lot of these laws for private prisons and stuff like that. And they have major donors like Walmart and
all these other major corporations that donate for this type of legislation. But how do we get people to understand that yes, what ALEC is doing is wrong. What these companies, what these private organizations are doing is wrong. But they have no power without the actual representatives introducing the legislation and then the entire body passing it. So the root of the tree of evil, let's say, would have to be the government passing it. So how do we shift the focus and say, yes, you're correct that large corporations and big businesses do bad things. However, the real root of the issue is the biggest corporation of all, which is government, because they are incorporated. They operate like a corporation. All your cities,
and they're a monopoly too. They're
exactly.
a monopoly. Yep.
So how do we shift that focus? What's the messaging on that? That's to say, hey, you're right. ALEC is a terrible organization, but how do they get things done? The only way to get it done is through the government,
the power structure.
The power structure. Yeah. How do we get rid of the power? How do we start to tear down something that's taken so long to build, where people are afraid that if you start to do it, then it's going to negatively affect them?
Well, first you have to get the message out. And you asked how to get the message out. You just said the message. All we have to do, and this is the beauty, when I came in and I saw what was happening with libertarian messaging, I pretty quickly figured out what the problem was. We aren't using the feel, felt, found method. We aren't using sales techniques in our outreach. Our outreach is to try to sell our system and our philosophy to people up front. And unless they are wired the same way as us, it's not going to work. And it's not like, oh, we're smarter. It's we process things differently. When we see something, even the smallest thing, we tend to systemize it. We tend to work it, figure out how this works into our greater ethos and philosophy and praxis. And if it doesn't, then we have to go through this process of reconciling it and figuring out what we have to change in our own belief structure in order to be. That's not how the 95, 97%. That's not how everyone else does it. They face things on an ad hoc basis using a combination of intuition, emotion, and intellect. And so the beauty of that is our problem is so simple that we simply have to change how we're interacting with people. And that's obviously easier said than done, but it's actually fairly easy. You just have to empathize with people. You have to meet people where they are, both in their spaces and from their precepts. And then from there, you already done half the work. Empathize with them. I'm going into Black Lives Matter spaces, protests, rallies, online Zoom calls, phone calls, conference calls, and things like that, talking with folks who have never talked to a Libertarian Party member, much less a candidate, ever, and had some really bad takes about libertarianism because we allowed ourselves to be defined by people who have a vested interest in keeping us out. And now I'm in front of them. Now I'm telling them, yeah, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, we want to crush systemic racism. Yeah, we want to end police brutality. Yeah, we recognize that the Democrats pander to you and then bring you nothing. And we can do similar stuff with Republicans on issues that they like, gun rights and things like that. And, lower taxes, smaller government. Yeah, all of that.
Military spending.
Specifically with this, their whole thing is they'll go, it's these corporations, man. And I go, yeah, it is these corporations. Why do they exist? Well, because they're benefiting from this thing existing.
They're greedy. Yeah. They're greedy.
They're greedy. But I'll say they are greedy. That's obviously why they're doing it. Yeah. Why do they exist? How do they exist? And usually after explaining, how government works and so forth, they get it pretty quickly because it's like, oh, that's why they exist. This isn't about there needs to be a law. It's the government needn't even be involved in this in the first place. The very creation of that structure, of that monopoly on violence and power and influence and wealth has created this system whereby instead of becoming wealthy by providing value to people, instead I can become wealthy by just pandering to cronies and getting them to do what I want, or being a crony that panders to politicians and getting them to do what I want in exchange for a few $1,000,000 or tens of millions of dollars in their campaign coffer. And that, I can make way more return on investment by being a scumbag under this system created to benefit scumbags at the expense of literally everybody else. And then from there, once we really have their attention, then we can get into why that is. So once we've gotten them to agree, and we don't have to start right off the bat, but once we get them to agree with it, when they now are saying, but why does this even exist? Now we can talk about self-ownership. We can say you own yourself and your life and your body and your labor and your property, and that the reason aggression against others is bad isn't just that it's morally wrong, but because it doesn't work. Because if I can take from the two of you and everyone else watching and listening to this at home, whenever I see fit, I'm not going to be a good steward of it because I can just take more of it whenever I want. And you're not going to be as good of a steward of what you have because I can take from you whenever I want, and you don't know when it's going to be taken from you. So you just use it as you wish, instead of coming up with longer, more longer term forward thinking ideas. You just spend it because you have it in front of you. And all of these systems that are created, all of these so-called solutions and policies and agencies and everything that the Republicans and Democrats have created are nothing more than a system whereby they have presumed the authority to take from all of us as they see fit. And that's why it leads to harmful and abusive and inequitable outcomes, because it's meant to. Because how could it not? And it's not a matter of simply replacing them with good people, because even if you could find those good people, which so far we haven't been able to find, who are going to run this incredibly corrupt, powerful system in a perfectly empathetic and altruistic way, they'll eventually be gone. And now what?
That's what I've always said.
It's a very easy road to hoe, but we have to start by meeting them where they are and empathizing with them and being kind and recognizing that it's not always going to be easy. They're going to call us greedy. They're going to call us selfish. They're going to say that we don't know what it's like to be whatever their identity is if we're white, or they're going to say that we don't know what it's like to be poor if we were never poor. They'll say things because they're having a reaction to having their beliefs challenged, even when we're agreeing with them. And then we need to not fall back on our laurels of attacking them with our systemized, way of looking at things, and instead realize that we're dealing with someone who is scared, who is wary, who is dealing with yet another politician or political thinker when they've been betrayed so many other times. And now what makes you think that you can just waltz in and they're going to suddenly listen to you? So we have to be patient. We have to be kind. We have to be empathetic. We have to be engaging. We have to be dynamic. We have to actually follow through. We have to demonstrate that we actually care. Because if we're not doing this with care for others, then just don't do it. Because if it's just based on your philosophy, you're not going to sell people on your philosophy, except people who are already like you, and they're already more than likely here. At this point with social media, anyone who's like us already knows about us. So we have to reach people who often are going to have a major problem, and they might even call you things you don't like. We have to be kind and empathetic and engaging and dynamic, and we have to be patient. And if we do that, and we show them that we actually care about them and change the face of how we do things to better fit how we would deal with someone that we care about and that we love, then if we do that with others, then they will come in. We will be able to change them, and it'll be an incredibly dynamic thing when it happens, because that will be, each time that happens, it'll be a snowball effect, because now the person who's presenting in their communities our ideas isn't some outsider doing it. It's someone they trust doing it. And so now all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier and it becomes a snowball effect. We just have to be kind. We have to be empathetic. We have to do what people in sales have been doing for, centuries now. We have to meet them where they are. We have to demonstrate ourselves as caring and empathetic and trustworthy characters. And then we have to present our solutions once we've won their hearts and minds.
One thing that's important is that it needs to be, salesmen can have a bad connotation for sure. That could be bad. It needs to be, I think libertarians have to find it inside of themselves for that to be real. Like, we have to realize that there is true empathy behind what we're talking about. I'm not a libertarian because I think I'm smarter than everyone and I hate the government or I'm a libertarian because I don't want to see millions of people starve to death when they don't have to. Like that, I don't want to see 500,000 people in a cage when they don't have to be in a cage. Like that's or a million, I guess.
2.1 million.
Yeah, 2.1 million, and you could say easily 50 to 60 to 70% probably shouldn't even be in there. I don't even know what the actual number is, so excuse me if those numbers are way off, but I know 45% are drug crimes. Is that right?
Nonviolent.
Like, I'm a libertarian because I don't want to see people put in cages, because I want everyone to have the best lives possible. And so libertarians, we went to Young Americans for Liberty, and we had this conversation with a room full of people there. We did a little speech, and we did a presentation, and we said, listen, no one, like hardly anyone thinks like you do, Everyone else thinks like this. Everyone else thinks emotions first. And what it is they want to help people. And what we have to get across is that so do we. We want to help people too. That's why we have this ideology, is because we want to help people. And so we've done a bad job getting that message across. It's all been anti this and anti that and anti everything else, when it needs to be pro a bunch of things, like pro maybe privatization. You could just say free market, pro, people's individual rights, all of these things, and start putting forward that message so people will be. Once you're on the defense, you're not really going to listen that much afterwards. Once you put someone on the defense for their ideology, they just put up a wall, and then that's it. So I
try to challenge people's belief systems as little as possible initially. Yeah. Because they already know I disagree with them. They already know I have this new idea, and or something that I'd rather deal with someone who's never heard of libertarianism than someone who got some terrible take on it, either from someone who hates libertarians or from a libertarian who has no business giving takes on libertarianism to others, or needs to reconfigure how they're doing it in the future. But when I deal with people like that, I don't want to challenge their beliefs. I want to agree with them, because again, they're worried about the same things we are. And once we bridge that gap, we've already gone halfway there. Once we are all on the same page that we want the same thing, even then when they start to go, yeah, but I don't really agree with that, they at least recognize we give a crap about them. Because often when they're hearing our ideas, we're already dealing with the cognitive defense right here of them going, I don't want to listen to this guy. He just wants poor people to starve. He wants his, this person I'm speaking to just wants their taxes to be lower. They don't care about anyone else. They don't care about their communities. They just want their taxes lower. So even if they agree with you on certain things, the second you start talking about deregulating or lowering tax burdens, they go, there it is. I was waiting for that. That's what you want. You have to demonstrate that you care. You have to demonstrate that, I talk a lot about income inequality. I talk a lot about marginalized communities. I talk a lot about harm reduction, not just because those things matter to me, but because they don't know those things matter to us. And when you show that you are leading with what they care about, now you can take them on the journey of what the problem is, and then you can present them with the solutions. Because they don't there are very few people that like Joe Biden, and I guess there's somewhat more because Donald Trump has a cult of personality around him. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority of Donald Trump's voters are people that look at Donald Trump and go, well, he's not Joe Biden. Yeah. And the vast majority, all but a handful of Joe Biden supporters are people that look at Joe Biden and go, oh, God, well, at least he's not Donald Trump. These are utterly gettable people. And that's before you even get into all the people that are on the sidelines going, I don't even think I'm going to vote this year. This sucks. I hate these choices. Or I don't even vote at all because I don't trust government. I don't think that they have it in. I don't think that, they have my best interests at heart. They're saying very libertarian stuff. We have to reach them where they are and from their precepts, and using an empathetic way of dealing with it. And we're not all going to be as effective in the same spaces as others are. Sometimes it's best if someone is most able to work in spaces like gun rights groups or, small government groups, Tea Parties, I would advise you to go into those groups, because honestly, I would rather that you go where you're the most comfortable and where you're able to be the most relatable than to immediately try to go and, talk with disaffected Bernie bros or something like that. Because, not that you can't eventually do that, but I'd rather you go where you're most comfortable. People should go into the spaces where they're most comfortable, into those spaces using their precepts, and bring people in, not recruit or convert, just bring them in to let them know that there is an actual viable alternative. And if we do that, we can win this thing. We can win this, not just the White House and gubernatorial races and stuff like that. We can win stuff at city council. We can win stuff across the board. We can have what we want, which is libertarians being a part, not just of the political conversation, but of the cultural conversation, which will work downstream to the political conversation. Because usually it's we, the people, dragging government along, kicking and screaming as we make the disruptive social changes we want to see in society. So let's do that. Let's be a part of that.
Man, I was looking through our live group, and you are winning some people over, dude. I think the LP is going to get some signups today for sure. Great. So as we start to round this out, I always give everyone an opportunity, anyone that's a candidate for anything, to speak to the voters on both sides. And what I'd like to hear is you walk up to a Trump supporter, and they want to know why you should get their vote.
I'll give you one specific
instead of Trump.
Actually.
What's that?
I'll give you one specific.
All
Someone
right.
who I think is very intelligent, and I watched her on this panel at a black convention where they had black people speaking about systemic racism, and to get her side of things, which is Candace Owens. So I think she's highly intelligent. She's very articulate. How do you why is she so much for Trump? Is it because of the organization she works for? She seems like she has very libertarian ideals. How do we, people want to be on this team sport where the divisiveness runs rampant. So I would say, how do we get people away from, well, at least it's not Joe Biden, or at least it's not Donald Trump? How do we, and maybe we don't even talk to those type of people because we're never going to change their minds, but what would you say would be the campaign, speech or elevator pitch or whatever it would be for someone like Candace Owens or for someone else who is going to vote to say, hey, this is the only way, this is the only true way that you're going to achieve what we all ultimately want to achieve, which is freedom and security?
Well, I can tell you the first thing what we don't do, which is what the gatekeepers have often told us is the best way to spread libertarianism, is to water down our message and say, well, we're kind of the best parts of the Republican and Democrat parties, if you think of it.
No.
We're conservative.
That's
we're
not
fiscally
compelling.
conservative. But what's that?
That's not compelling.
No, it's not compelling, and it's actually the opposite of compelling.
So you suck in two different ways.
When you are asking, and what many people hear is, we're the worst parts of both parties.
Right.
We don't like either party, really. Now you're telling us you're like both of them. Here's what a third party, when we ask someone to vote for a third party candidate in a third party, we're typically asking them to vote for someone who statistically isn't very likely to win. And so when you present yourself as this kind of cool, best part of both sides, we'll get into what I'm about later, but you just need to know I care about you and like these other two guys, and we're just really cool. We're party for the people, and we're kind of the best parts. Whatever you like, we like too. But doing it in that kind of a pandery way, here's what's just happened. The voter has now been given one of two options by you. One is the Republicans and Democrats, who don't really represent them and they don't really like them that much, but they're likely to win in their mind. And the second option is this new party that sounds like it might be better for me. And there's probably some things in there that I probably would agree more than the Republicans and Democrats, but they're likely not to win. That's how you get 1%. That's how you get 2%. That's how you get 3.26% that we got in the last election. You have to come at them from what they actually care about and not pander to them and say, well, we're like the Republicans do, but without the stuff you don't like. You have to be specific. You have to care about what they care about. And this is why I say, those of you listening, you are the power behind this movement. I'm here out broadcasting on a large level and providing policy specifics and things like that to those who ask. It's you that are changing the hearts and minds. It's you that are having those conversations with loved ones. You are the power in this. And so what I would say to you is, when you're talking to someone who says, well, but we have to beat Biden, I would say, yeah, I can't stand Biden. What are the things you like the least about Biden? And then they'll tell you. And the beauty of our job is we can explain very easily how Trump has said or done all of those things, and vice versa. And you could say, yeah, Donald Trump did that, and Donald Trump said this, and the Republicans did this, and we didn't like when they did that. And you can even say, because there are plenty of times conservatives get upset at the Republican Party, like the bump stop bans and the vaping bans, and when they acquiesce every time on spending bills and everything else, and these spending trillions of dollars and handing them to Wall Street and everything. And you could say, remember that was terrible, I hate that. And then you can, another way to do it is start with all of your disagreements in general with what government does, and then pivot back to, and that's why I'm supporting Joe Jorgensen. And when they go, yeah, but we gotta beat Joe Biden, or we got to beat Donald Trump, you can go, yeah, no, what are the things you dislike about them? And when they say those, you can go, yeah, but remember, government did that too, or, the other side did that too. Even if you don't get them right then, you've planted a seed. They're starting to realize, I think I might be getting bamboozled here, because it's and then that's why I don't really get too much into just beating up one side over the other. I tend to make sure that people are hearing that both sides are completely knee deep in all of this nonsense. And so that would be an effective way to do it, is just remind them that the other side's every bit as bad. And then, this is the beauty of it, then pivot to our solutions, our ideas, because everyone has heard plenty of, this guy sucks, don't vote for this lady, don't vote for this person, don't vote for this person, don't vote for this guy. But what they don't hear a lot is actual ideas. They get these like little pandery, we're going to make healthcare more affordable, but no real specifics. You can talk to them about how we would fix things. And after disabusing them of the notion that there's any real lesser evil between the Republicans and Democrats, now you can share with them our ideas. And again, this is a conversation that probably will take a little bit longer than just a minute or two, but these are conversations you can be having. It does not guarantee that you're going to get everyone. We're not going to get everyone. We're not the Borg. We don't expect 100% domination of all people's brains, but you plant seeds and they might say something to someone, or someone else might be, especially if you're doing this online on social media with comments, assume that 100 or 1,000 other people are watching, because they probably are or will be in the future. Especially if you're commenting on Jo Jorgensen's page, she has 100,000 followers. So tens of thousands of people might be looking at what you wrote. So even if you're not getting the person you're talking with or commenting with, you're getting other people, which again is another, you're getting in other people who are listening and will never comment. They're just lurking. They're just hearing things, which is again, another reason to be kind. Be the kind one. Be the one who looks like the good guy in all situations, whether you're talking in person, on the phone, on Zoom, on social media, whatever. Be the good guy. Be the kind, empathetic, magnanimous, and logical one. And be the one that's actually changing minds, because a lot of people walk away saying, well, this one was a jerk, so I'm going to go with what this one said. So be the one that they go with. Don't be the jerk.
Yeah, I hardly ever am in a debate with someone on Facebook or anywhere where I'm actually trying to change their mind. I know that the people are going to come out and read comments later, which is nice that you can react to comments now, because you'll see the likes start to pile up.
You get the feedback,
on your response, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I think a lot of people are understanding. So it's not even I'm not trying to convince the other person, really. And I think that's another approach a lot of people should take. We talk about that a lot too, that it starts with you. Everyone wants solutions. It starts with you. And as libertarians, we believe in personal responsibility, and this movement has to be what I call a grassroots movement. Man,
grassroots.
It starts at the grassroots.
We believe in personal responsibility, so let's be personally responsible for sharing the message.
Exactly.
We believe in a free and open marketplace of ideas, so let's be the best providers in that marketplace of ideas. Let's actually apply our systemic philosophical belief in actual praxis, in the world. Let's actually be the human action that we wish to see on a retail level, on a conversational level with people. The three filters I like to use when I'm getting into a conversation with someone that it might be going south, or I might be getting upset and wanting to make sure that I don't react emotionally. The first filter: pretend everyone you know and everyone else is watching, because there's a good chance thousands of people are watching. What would you want them? How would you want them to see you acting? Number two, pretend you're talking with someone pretend you're talking with the person you care about more than anything else. A parent, a spouse, cousin, loved one, friend, whatever. But pretend that they just vehemently disagree with you on this subject. How would you talk to them? And then the final filter is, we weren't all libertarians. Most of us came here from something else. Charles Chuck said earlier that he was, he came from the Republican Party. I did the same. I was a neocon.
Oh yeah.
Pretend you're talking.
I thought Obama was going to ruin everything. I thought,
Obama.
America was over.
Well, and he wasn't even an American. I bought all that.
I know, right?
Anyway, so pretend you're talking to that guy. Pretend you're talking to that woman. Pretend you're talking to your former self back when you believed stuff that you think is ridiculous now. How would you have wanted someone to talk to you and treat you at that time? Pretend you're talking to yourself. Pretend you're talking about someone you care to, someone you're caring, talking to someone you care about. Pretend that lots of people are looking. Try to be accountable and responsible for how you are engaging, and try to be empathetic and kind and magnanimous and dynamic in how you present it. You will get people, if not that person, many others. People you may not even know, people who may not ever reach out to you, but you're planting seeds left and right and don't even know it.
Now this, I know we have to wrap up here, and this may be controversial because Chris Spangle from We Are Libertarians, you know, when we talked to him, he was like, look, we have to stop talking about these types of things. But I think because I'm the person that gave you shit on our podcast, probably like a month ago, that you should face your accuser, me. And I wanted to ask you about the interview with your shirt off. And so,
Nipplegate.
Yeah, Nipplegate. That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Everyone needs a gate.
Now I understand, you know, obviously I think I agree with Chris, like, hey, we have to stop talking about this stuff and then people won't pay attention to it. But the other side of me is like, I understand you did it probably for attention, and media is just not going to come out and give the Libertarian Party attention. They're going to try to keep us out of the debates. They're going to try to do all of that. I understand that. So what was kind of give me the real reasoning behind it. And then what do you think, cause I saw a lot of, people who lean towards liberty be really upset about it. And when I say a lot, I'm saying like
3.
No, I mean, I would
7.
say tens.
No, there were a lot of people that were very upset.
So I'm just curious.
So, and especially the people who didn't know anything about me before, and they're like,
yeah, I had no idea about you before. I really didn't.
VP nominee Spike Cohen, who is this? And then they look and they go, oh, he's a guy who needs to work out and has his shirt off. So here is the calculus behind what that was. It was not getting attention was not even really factored in. It was somewhat of a factor, but it really wasn't. Here is what I was facing in the aftermath of being nominated. As many people probably know, I was Vermin Supreme's proposed running mate. And I believe that Vermin's style of nonlinear messaging and satire is an incredibly powerful way of reaching a very large minority of voters who don't participate and don't want to hear a thing from a politician. But if you can entertain them, you can get their attention. You can lower that cognitive defense because they don't feel like a politician's lying to them. They're just being entertained. Now they want to hear more. And now, they know there's an underlying political message. And over time, they want to hear more and more and more. And then we get them. And that's why Vermin's been so fantastic at bringing in thousands of people to the party. And I'm grateful that he is campaigning and helping Joe and I in our campaign because, we have a very serious message, a very serious concern about the future that our country and we as individuals and we as communities are facing. So specifically with Nipplegate, I got the nomination. I had I had a few different factors here. One, a lot of people didn't know who I was outside of the Libertarian Party and outside of, so my Muddy Waters Media, the shows that I have, we don't market to libertarians. We have libertarians that watch it, but we market outside of liberty circles. So we try to bring in people from well outside of liberty circles. We feel like there are a ton of other podcasts and shows and everything that are doing a fantastic job of bringing libertarian-minded people into libertarianism. We wanted to go and reach people that had never even heard of it. So for that reason, I wasn't well known in the Libertarian Party when I first started running. Within 6 months, they made me the nominee. And now I'm in a situation where a large number of people in just the greater liberty movement don't know a lot about me. And we're working on that. And that's I'm more well known with each day. But so I had that going on. But I also had a lot of the Vermin supporters who wanted me to take the mantle of Vermin, to wear the boot, if not literally, then figuratively, and start just being this satirical campaigner, which really was never what I was. I was always sort of the straight man to Vermin. I'd joke around with them somewhat, but I was more Vermin was bringing them in with the satire, and then I would present the actual serious message. That was the 1-2 punch of how we did it. And I always planned, no matter who I was paired with, to run a serious campaign and to use empathetic and dynamic messaging to share a serious message with people in a serious way. That was always the plan. The other thing I was facing was where a lot of the more pragmatic people in the party wanted me to just now I was to pretend that I had never done anything funny in my entire life, to not even be funny on my shows, and to present myself in just a completely almost dour presentation, which is not who I am. I present things in a humorous way. Even if I'm not being satirical, I still have a good-natured, humorous approach. I always plan to campaign as Spike Cohen, the way that Spike Cohen campaigns, not the Joe Jorgensen way, which is a great way to campaign. And I think we are a fantastic fusion pairing. But Joe Jorgensen is Joe Jorgensen, and she's campaigning her way in a fantastic way. And I'm Spike Cohen, and I'm campaigning my way. And we're doing a great job campaigning together. And I'm not campaigning like Vermin. Vermin's doing a great job bringing people to the party into our campaign. But I'm not Vermin Supreme. I'm Spike Cohen. The other thing was that there was this ridiculous scandal of the fact that my personal profile picture on my Facebook page was a picture of me lying on the beach without a shirt on. At the beach in the water.
I didn't see that, but that's just ridiculous.
So that's what started that whole thing.
Okay.
So I had all these different things going on, and I realized I needed to do something to recalibrate everything, to put a jolt in everything. And that's what Nipplegate was. I did a show where I talked totally seriously. I didn't joke once. I didn't even laugh. I told serious stuff. We talked about police brutality and the quantitative easing and the Federal Reserve and everything else. No shirt on. And I'm holding a stuffed. Everyone forgets I'm also holding a stuffed sparkly narwhal in the middle of all that.
That's what I was most upset about.
That's what a lot of people were upset about.
Yeah.
And the other scandal was a lot of people thought that the hat I was wearing was from Liberty Hangout, and it's not. It's from Dan Berman. But so that was a mini scandal there. But so the bottom line is, I presented a jolt. I let the Vermin people know that I was not selling out by not campaigning like Vermin moving forward, because that was never my plan, but that I do things the way that I want to do things. I let the Joe people know, and I shouldn't even say the Joe people, because it was never from Joe's team or anything like that. This was individual people who thought, okay, now put on a suit and tie at all times and never crack a joke ever again. I let them know that I do things the way that I want to, and I'm campaigning that way. And now everything moving forward looks far more serious in contrast. And so now they're all saying, I didn't know what to think about you, and I didn't like that whole nipple thing, but man, you really know how to make a point, blah, blah, blah. So I did that. And the other thing I did was, it got what I was doing out there to a lot of people. And I knew that they would attack me, and I knew that that attack would give way to wanting to find out more. Why the hell did they even pick this guy? And that wanting to find out more would eventually give way to them hearing what I actually have to say. And so I was willing to take the bumps and the bruises and the people calling me a joke and saying that I was single-handedly destroying the libertarian movement, because I knew that would last for a matter of a couple of weeks, and that over time people would come in, and more people. So we see it. There's the ratio between people saying I'm terrible and people telling them to actually look into what I have to say is just continuing to become lopsided. And that was always the intention. With that said, I have never done an interview before, nor do I plan to do an interview after, without wearing clothes.
Well, I'm glad we got that on the record, but
well, you don't need pants on.
Well, we all agree with that. That's not even controversial.
Visible clothes, right? Clothes on my visible person.
Yeah, that's not a big deal. Yeah, man, I just want to say I was in that same camp when that happened, and I admitted to our followers, to our supporters, and our listeners several times over the last couple of weeks that my initial response was
an emotional one.
That you are actually one of the best libertarian speakers I've heard in a long time. And I just could not be more excited that you're out there talking to people about this, because it's freaking amazing. And so I'm going to make a donation to the campaign. And what I want you to let me know is, where can I go to do that?
Go to joj2020.com/contribute, or you can just go to joj2020.com and there's a donate button. And we would appreciate everyone's donations. That would be fantastic. Anything that you're able to give, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Great,
awesome, man. Well, we love the conversation, and maybe we'll have you back on as things keep rolling.
I'd love it.
And 2016, we thought we had a great opportunity. 2020 said, "Hold my beer," and let's get the grassroots movement going on this.
Let's do it. Let's win this thing, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time. Nate, Charles, Chuck, Charlie, thank you so much for your time.
All right,
greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Spike.
Have
Take
a great
care.
day.
Bye.